Hi, I'm Kev from Ace Classics. Today we're at the bike shed to talk about this 1963 Bud Ekins desert sled replica that we built in our shop in London. At Ace Classics we manufacture and specialise in classic Triumph motorcycles, mainly pre-unit and unit Triumphs. We send parts all around the world every day. That is our main sort of business. But what we also do is restore bikes. From a parts book we can build a bike to every nut and bolt original throughout the bikes as we've got all the parts on the shelf. But what we also love doing is building bikes like this one here. This is a desert racer. This particular desert racer is a replica of Bud Ekins' 1963 TT Bonneville. We have wanted to build this bike for a long time. To build something like this, we scour the internet for lots of pictures, but on this occasion there was 2 to 3 pictures of this actual bike, so that made it very difficult. So you've got to look at other bikes of the same period, maybe what Steve McQueen was riding, because there's lots more pictures of Steve McQueen obviously, and think, how would Bud have built his bikes? I'm saying Bud Ekins, but some of you might not know who Bud Ekins was. He was a big time Hollywood actor, kind of stuntman. Bud Ekins most famous for the Great Escape jump, doubled as Steve McQueen. He also done a lot of stunt driving in the film Bullet, also another Steve McQueen film. Very good friends with Steve McQueen, so he built bikes for him and they were good buddies. They went desert racing together. For those of you who don't know what desert racing is, it was a sport in America where you could have hundreds of bikes lined up on a start line getting ready to race across the Californian deserts. You'd all be looking, starting off, there'd be a smoke bomb set off, they'd all set off into the same place. Bearing in mind a desert race was 100 miles long. In the first 5 miles they say a lot of them all fell off and they never got up again. You're up against all kinds of terrains, rocks, deserts, everything was coming at you. And the bikes got up to speeds of sort of 80, 90, maybe in some cases on the flatter grounds 100 miles an hour. If you had a bike and you wanted to go desert racing, you could go to Bud Ekins' shop and he'd make a bike for you like a desert racer. He had lots of his own things like exhaust pipes he could supply and bolt onto a bike for you. They called him the Desert Fox because he was good at what he'd done. If he went into a race, 9 times out of 10 he would win that race. So we have a friend in America called Gene Smith. He quoted to me, this is his words, not mine. He said, Kev, them bikes were great for what they were. They was ill-handling, heavy, tank-slapping, kick-assing bikes. And that's what they were, and you had to be a man to ride them bikes. I thought that was quite a good quote from Gene because obviously being in America, he rode with Bud Ekins. He was there at the time. He knew Steve McQueen, one of the guys that I sort of get a lot of information from. Real good information source. Great friend of ours, Gene, in America, so thanks for them words, Gene, and a bit of the history you found on the bike for us. So that's an overview of the bike. I'd like to show you some finer details of the bike. Let's take a look round and show you what we've done. So I've spoken about the bike, I've showed you some of the stuff, a bit of history behind the bike, but without Ewan here, our mechanic at the shop, none of this would have been possible. So I thought it'd be really nice to have Ewan on board, show you some of the stuff he's done, maybe starting with the front end of the bike. Ewan, do you want to tell them what tyres we use and rims?
On the original Bud Ekins bike, this would have had a Dunlop Trials Universal on it, but they don't make that tyre anymore, so we've used a 350/19 Enzyme on this. That's mounted on the steel chromed rims, which are new. You'll notice that the hub is a half-width hub, which was something that was Bud Ekins used to use for a bit of weight saving. This is an air scoop front brake. I had to make this plate up. They did that to try and cope with the sand going into the brakes. These are actually 1957 pre-unit fork legs. He used them because there is a little bit of extra travel on the forks with those. This is the number board that he raced with, exactly the same as the one that was on the bike. I actually scanned the photograph into my computer and got the stencil for the numbers exactly the same, and made the stencil up and painted that on. He also had this, in the picture there's a bit of duct tape on the corner of the number board. What that's for I don't know.
What's really cool about this number, so in the previous year in '62, our friend again, Gene Smith in America, tells me to earn these you had to earn these numbers. So '62, Bud Ekins was ranked, or finished 13th, so the next year he got to ride with the number 13 plate, which, considering there was almost 1,000 bikes, maybe even 1,000 bikes, was pretty cool. I mean, to get number 13, you'd have had to been one hell of a good rider. That might mean he come top 5 in some races, he would have won a lot of races. They've done a lot of desert racing, so that's quite nice. Might be nice to tell them about the handlebars, you and things like that.
Yeah, so these are obviously brace bars, something that Bud Ekins used to like to use. You had the ball end chrome levers on here. I'll just point out behind the number board there's a plug and socket for a quickly detachable front light, because the customer, he lives in France and they have to have running lights every day. So
another thing that Bud done and a lot of desert racers done was run the throttle cables over the top of the petrol tank. That was in case they broke a throttle cable that was against the time, against the clock. They could easily undo the carb top, change the cable and be on their way. While we're on the top of the tank, it's nice to show you the Bud Ekins decal there, like the Bud Ekins dealership badge, which is something quite cool. That's something we sell, you can buy that. On the petrol tank would have normally had knee rubbers here, black knee rubbers. That's why you can see the holes, but Bud Ekins took them off. Also, between the knee rubbers and tank badge would have been a little chrome trim, and that made the bike look prettier. But obviously, being a desert racer that was raced across the deserts, they got a hard life. Any parts like this they didn't really need, so they just done away with them and took them off. What I think would be nice now, if talk about the exhaust pipes, Ewan, and ground clearance, why they used them.
Yeah, so the high level pipes were quite popular with the desert racers to keep them away from the floor with all the boulders and such. So these dead straight pipes are something that was very common with Bud Ekins bikes.
Another thing Ewan's made, which you might think is a little bit unusual, is this great big air filter. So 1963 through to 65, Triumph fitted this air box here, but Bud Ekins take it a bit a step further to cope with the sand and the dirt, fitted this paper element to just cope with the desert. When if you think the sand and stuff all getting in the carb slides, that would have ruined the bike, and the bikes wouldn't have lasted long, because obviously that all then gets inside the bores of the engine and would make it sort of very hard and wouldn't last long. You'd have to rebuild the engine every race. I mean, a typical desert race was 100 miles. We mounted on two 389 monoblock carbs, standard for the year. Ewan, do you want to show Dan the footrest plates here and what they're for?
Yeah, so we didn't actually notice that these were on the photograph until a few days ago, so we quickly made these plates up. You might also notice that these were on that 502 Steve McQueen desert racer that Bud also built. These plates wrap round the chain case, and if you come off, any impact will be dispersed across the case, trying to stop it from cracking.
If you walk around the other side, Dan, you'll be able to see that we've done that both sides of the bike, so the gearbox cover was protected as well. What you'll notice here on this side is the oil tank is slightly unusual for a Triumph. So when you had a normal seat, the seat would flip up and the oil tank cap would be underneath. But when using a bait seat, that was hard mounted to the frame, and you had to have the cap facing out this way. The Catalina Grand Prix sticker wasn't ever on this bike, but because Bud Ekins won the Catalina Grand Prix in 1955, we thought it was quite fitting, and he won it several other times as well. You'll notice on the back of the bike, just here, is a little base light. Again, it shouldn't really be on this bike, but because this bike's going to France, it's got to have daytime running lights all the time. Still on the back of the bike, you can see a part of it here, but if you come around this side, it might be a bit clearer. You've got the Girling racing shocks. The way to tell them was the chrome cover on the top and the black springs. They was just a bit more, sort of, they could take the desert a bit more. You'd see them on ISDT bikes. So they was made by Girling. There was a bit of an upgrade. Another thing that it'd be better if Ewan tells you about, because he made this himself, is this oil feed here.
Yeah, so a common thing they used to do in the deserts was have main oil pressure up to the rockers. I mean, this one's just dummy. That's just for show, because we wanted to try and limit oil leaks. But it's yeah, something that Bud used to use a lot.
Disappears back in behind the oil tank there, but like Ewan says, it would have been for real, and that would have got the oil pressure up a lot faster. You may have noticed the bike has what's known as like an odd pair of tyres. So on the front we have a 350/19 trials, as we spoke about earlier, but on the back it would have originally had a Dunlop Sport, which 418. They're not available, so we use Continental TKC80, which is the closest thing we can find, and they're a really good tyre. I mean, as a match pair of tyres, trials tyre and this Continental, they actually ride good. You wouldn't think you're riding on knobblies, so that's what we use on these bikes. So works well, still looks the part, and it does the job. Moving up to the mudguard, this is a steel mudguards rather than the front one being alley. This bike seems to keep its steel guard, all painted by us, not of a shop, but we've got our own painter. So tank guards all been painted, all been painted by us. Moving on to a seat, I did talk about this a little bit earlier on, but this is a bait seat. We've got this as close as we can from pictures. One of the hardest jobs on this bike was the seat. It's a little bit out of our control, but we've done what we think it looks right from the pictures we've got. I think it'd be nice. I mean, Ewan can talk through the engine, what we've done to the engine. It's had a full engine rebuild. So Ewan, do you want to?
Yeah, so the carburetors on this are brand new, still made by Amel. They're 389 monoblocks. So yeah, you name it in the engine, it's all either brand new or been totally refurbished. So crank grind, new cams, new valves, valve guides. It's got 7:1 pistons in it to cope with the modern fuel. Yeah, new clutch. Everything in this is as close to as how it would have come off the production line.
What you're probably all dying to see and hear is this bike running, so we'd like to take it outside and let you hear it revving up. It sounds beautiful. I mean, what you've got to imagine is this bike in 1963 racing across the desert. Why don't we start it up here in London at the bike shed so you can all hear it? Let's take it outside and see what you think.
So there's a bit of a starting process to these old bikes. It's not like the modern bikes with electric start and modern ignition systems. So you just have to turn the taps on, tickle the carbs until some petrol comes through, and then give it a good kick.
So I hope you've enjoyed watching the video today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Bike Shed YouTube channel. You'll probably also find some of our previous videos of the Bike Shed. Also, if you want to keep up to date with what we do, Ace Classics, follow us on Instagram, Facebook and our website. Thanks for watching.